Hello, everyone. I'm Daz, and welcome to American Civil War and UK History podcast. This presentation is available as a video on our YouTube channel or as a podcast from wherever you get your podcast from. And if you're watching on YouTube, remember to hit the subscribe button and give us a big thumbs up. And for everything American Civil War and UK history, check out our website where you'll find blog posts, podcasts, and links to all of our social media pages. The link is in the podcast description. And joining me today is Brendon Stead. Welcome, Brendon.
Hello everyone.
Brendon is the face behind a fabulous social media pages called The Blue and Grey Historian, which we will discuss later on. But today's discussion is about the Battle of Cedar Creek, which took place on October the 19th, 1864. Okay, Brendon, let's get straight into it then. So give us an overview of 1864 and how we get to the point of the Valley Campaign, and a little bit of an overview of that, please.
Right, right. So I'm gonna give you guys a little background on Jubal Early's campaign. So we're gonna take a little step back to the beginning of the 1864. So this is right. So to everyone, just don't get a little confused with this. This is after the Gettysburg. The Civil War just enters third year, and a lot of things had changed throughout the war. USS Grant's the commander of the Union Army, and he is brought over from the Western Theater. And Abraham Lincoln decided to promote him to lieutenant general, and he gives him the command of all Union armies. So with Grant's plan, he's decided that he's going to attack all the Confederate armies that are stationed in the South, and his goal was to destroy them and force them to surrender as soon as possible for the war to be over. Because remember, the war has been going on for a long time, and the people are desperate for the war to be ended. And Lincoln just started his reelection to become the president for his second term in the United States. And remember, Lincoln's not looking. He's he's hoping that any victories will help him, achieve a victory. Which, spoiler alert, which I'll describe about that later on in this topic. So Grant comes over from the Western Theater. He's going to be over with the Army of the Potomac. He's going to go after Robert E. Lee, and that's his goal, to attack all Confederate armies without them reacting to each armies in the Eastern Theater. Because remember, the Eastern Theater was not going well in the beginning of the war. With Manassas, with the Confederate victory, you got Second Bull Run, you got the Peninsula Campaign, and you got the Maryland Campaign, which could have ended the war sooner. So Grant is attacking Lee. He goes after Lee during the Overland Campaign, where Robert E. Lee fights him at the Battle of Wilderness, and it goes on for a couple weeks, clashing for 2 months until Grant decided that he's going to slip down, keep going by the right flank, passes by, he crosses the James River, he gets towards Richmond, but he is blocked by P.T. Beauregard when they get down to Petersburg, and Beauregard repulses James Butler, Army of the James, and it goes into the siege of Petersburg, which would take several months. And while Grant's going after Robert E. Lee, he places Franz Sigel, who's in charge of the Army of the Valley, and his goal is to go after the Shenandoah Valley, which is known as the breadbasket. And remember, this is a very important region that would have supplies that would feed Robert E. Lee's army, and that would go on for several years. And the Shenandoah Valley is not just an important supply network. It's also a transportation where they can transport troops over to the Western Theater, help out with other armies there, like Joe Johnson, he's down at Tennessee. He's being repulsed by William T. Sherman, who's going after Atlanta so that they can stop the manufacture of iron down there and start working his way up to meet up with Grant and push and destroy, Robert E. Lee's army. And so, so after Franz Sigel goes down into the Shenandoah Valley, he goes to New Market where John C. Breckinridge, the former vice president, he repulsed him at New Market, and Sigel is removed from command, and Grant placed Hunter in command. He would go to Lynchburg, and he would burn the town of Lynchburg, and he would go after the Virginia Military Institute and retaliate for the looting and destruction that the Confederates. So Robert E. Lee is holding Petersburg. He knows that okay, if we can okay, we know that Abraham Lincoln's election is coming up. If we can force the politicians, if we can force the civilians and the northern soil, we can make the northern people get rid of Abraham Lincoln and place a Democrat leader, and they would end the war. So Robert E. Lee decided that, okay, I'm gonna have to make this game plan. How can I do this? So there's only one man that he would place in command to do this task, and that man would be Jubal A. Early. And he's given the blessing of Robert E. Lee with a detachment of Second Corps with him, and his goal is to go back into the north and seek the and his goal was to protect the Shenandoah Valley, which was, like I say, it was a major food source for Lee's army, and to force the Union to divert the resources and relieve some pressure that the army of Northern Virginia was receiving at Petersburg and Richmond. So Early goes after Hunter. He beats Hunter at the Battle of Lynchburg and the Second Battle of Kernstown, which resulted in the Confederate victory. Then Early goes into the north and he attacks the Union Army at the Battle of Monocacy, which he wins. But 2 days later, Early's army's he's in front of Washington D.C. The public are worried that, oh no, the Confederate army are in Washington. What are we going to do? My goodness. So Grant sends several corps up to Washington, D.C., and that's when they would repulse the Confederate invaders, and they would win their battle at Washington at the Battle of Fort Stevens. And Early decided to send Brigadier General John McCausland to Chambersburg, and they would burn the town in retaliation for the Union forces' destruction in the Shenandoah Valley.
Excellent. Thank you, mate. And so before we get into, obviously, so at some point, Grant is obviously going to have to do something about Early. As I said, Early's been repulsed from Fort Stevens, hasn't he? But then he's gone back into the valley. So what is Grant's thinking behind Sheridan getting involved, and to talk us about Sheridan's campaign leading up to the Battle of Cedar Creek?
Right. So Philip Sheridan, he's a commander. He fought at the Western Theater. So when Grant gets rid of Franz Sigel, he gets rid of David Hunter, and he decided, okay, I'm gonna take the middle military division, and I am going to build this into a new army, which Grant calls it the Army of the Shenandoah. And he knows that there's only one person that he would trust to take command, and that man would be Philip Sheridan and his school. So at the creation, the army had three objectives. One was to drive Early's army away from the Potomac, away from Washington, D.C., so that way they cannot divert troops to go after Early while they're focused on Robert E. Lee's army and the Army of Northern Virginia. And they would pursue the Early's army southward. Second, their goal was to destroy the valley's capacity to destroy the valley supplies, because remember, guys, the valley is producing resources, wheat, bread. They're developing. They have mills there. Farmers. They're working. You know, giving resources to Lee's army in Northern Virginia because that's their supply chain right there. And as I said, they have transportation in the Shenandoah Valley. That's why Stonewall Jackson was very good of taking care of three Union armies in 1862, and Robert E. Lee would use the Shenandoah Valley as his transportation that would take his army back into the North, invasion of the North, which leads to the Battle of Gettysburg. So, and the third objective was to disrupt the Virginia Central Railroad, because remember, guys, I said their transportation, they would send supplies, transport troops across to the Western Theater or the Eastern Theater. And Sharon would be given command, but he was very cautious. He's worried that so Sharon was he was worried that any military disaster, let's say like Monocacy, like Lynchburg, like New Market, like any disaster that would destroy any Union armies that would result in Abraham Lincoln's election. Any polls will make Lincoln not get reelected, and Sharon was, he's like, I can take care of this. I can handle the task. I can go after Early's army. I can keep destroying him. I can keep disrupting, supplies. And he's like, okay, I will do this. So Sharon's campaign starts with he goes after Early at Summons Point, Smithfield Crossing, Gar Hill, Berryville, until the Third Battle of Winchester, which resulted in a Union victory because Robert Rose would be killed. He would be mortally wounded at the Battle of Third Winchester. Early's retreating, but he's still trying to delay the Union army advancing into the Shenandoah Valley. He's trying his best to repulse the Union armies. But remember, the army the army of the army of the Valley was they don't have enough men. They don't have enough resources. They don't have enough supplies to keep up with their soldiers. Because remember, these guys they were described as a dirty rag soldiers. They don't have enough supplies. Remember, there's a loss of desertion coming up. There's a loss of many soldiers being killed or wounded, in the hospital. They don't have enough resources to replace any of these stuff. So Sharon goes after him, and he goes to Fisher Hill, which resulted in another Union victory. And then he goes after Early at Tom's Brook, which resulted in another victory. So Sharon takes possession of the Shenandoah Valley as far as Stanton, and he knows that he believes that Early's army is gone from the valley, and Sharon can just focus on destroying the Confederacy. He can just start, destroying more supplies. He can instill fear into the civilians. Stop doing this, and we'll just keep we'll keep destroying your buildings. They destroy. They aggressively been destroying lots of barns, mills, factory, and this operation from September 26th to October 8th has been considered known as the Burning or Red October. Very scary, in my opinion. That's very scary. Sharon believes that when the destruction was completed, he quoted that he said that the valley from Winchester up to Stanton, 92 miles, will have but little in it for a man or beast. And this action achieved when Grant preferred that he wants Sharon to attack on railroads that supplies Robert E. Lee's army in Richmond. And Sharon's he's doing a great job. He's pushing through. He gets rid of Early's army back, and Early retreats to Stanton, and he knows, he believes that Early's done, but Early is not done yet. He is not. So something very bad is going to come up and happen.
Okay, so that brings both armies into that area of around Cedar Creek. But could you just tell us about the location of Cedar Creek and whereabouts it is located, please?
So it's located in the Virginia Shenandoah Valley. The Sears Creek and the Belle Grove National Historic Park is located in that region. It's not far from Winchester or Kernstown. It's on the one of the routes, US Route 11 in Middletown, not far from the battlefield. Which, like if you're ever visiting Sears Creek, is not it's actually not far from Kernstown or Winchester.
Excellent. Okay, mate. Thanks for that information. Um, yeah, okay. So let's talk about the Battle of Cedar Creek then. Obviously, October the 19th, 1864. Take us through the battle, my friend.
Course. So Early knows that Sharon's. So I'm gonna give you guys a little background, little prelude before the battle. So Early knows that he knows that Sharon's attacking him. He's disrupting his supplies. Early doesn't have enough. He doesn't have enough resources. He doesn't have enough resources to replace the soldiers that he is commanding in the field. So he turns to his second command, John B. Gordon, which some of you viewers and or listeners may have heard this man before. John B. Gordon. He was the brigadier general of in the Civil War, and Gordon would command one of the Alabama regiment during the Civil War, which is famously in the Sunken Road at Antietam. So he would tell Gordon that we're going to do a surprise attack on the Union Army because Sharon's camp up at Sears Creek. He wants his men to rest. He knows that Early's not. He's not He's not going to attack them anymore. They're gone. Sharon thought it would be. He thought it would be a good place, to get the men rest, resupply, and keep continuing his task. And Early, he tells Gordon to scout and find out where the Union position was. And John B. Gordon, he surveys the Union Army on single knock, and he's looking for any weakness. And one of the officers that was one of the officers that was with him, his name was so forgive me for trying to pronounce his name. His first name is Jedediah Hotchkiss. He was a map maker, and he sketched the map, and he was starting to take notes, where the Union Army was. So he knows that there were three corps in that area, and he reports back to Jubal Early, and Early's like, okay, starting October 19th at 5 o'clock a.m., we're going to attack the Union Army. Now, remember this, guys. This battle is very similar to the Battle of Shiloh, where Elbert Sidney Johnston decides to attack Grant's army before Grant and Don Carlo Buell would join forces together to attack the Confederates at Corinth or Iuka. Now, Jubal Early has about the men that he has in his command are I just want to make sure I have that information correct for how many men that he had in his command, in his command. So Jubal Early had about 21,000 men under his command, and Sharon's army had about closely to 32,000 men under his command. Now remember, Early's not doing good, like I said before, with the resources and everything else. So at Sears Creek at 5 o'clock a.m., John B. It started at 5 o'clock a.m. when the Confederates were scouting ahead, and they know that they're going to attack the Union Union Army. So you have John B. Gordon, you got Kershaw, you got Wharton, and they're going to attack them at their camps while the Union Army are asleep. So Gordon scouts. He finds out where the Army of West Virginia is, along with the Sixth Corps and the 19th Corps and the cavalry behind them. So Gordon he persuade Early to approve this plan to attack on the Union left flank, and they believe, we can destroy this army of Sharon, push him out of the Shenandoah Valley. And Early's like, okay, I'm fine. Early's like, okay, I will approve this plan as long as I trust you. If you can find the route to allow your troops to attack around the Union left. Now, remember, this is very similar to previous battles and campaigns like the Battle of Chancellorsville, where Stonewall Jackson would take a little detour um, around the left flank, and they would attack the 11th Corps, which resulted in another Confederate victory with the loss of Stonewall Jackson. But moving onwards, he scouts at the Shenandoah River, which is at the North Fork, which you guys can probably see on this map here. He scouts and he finds that, okay, there's a trail there which can take my troops around that flank and attack the Army of West Virginia. He founds the trail. He reports to Early. Early approves the plan. He's like, you may begin your attack on the morning of October 19th. So the attack began at 5 o'clock when everything was foggy. They were attacking the Army of West Virginia troops. They were unprepared. Many of these guys were asleep in their tents, and they didn't have time to get up into their uniforms. They just started grabbing whatever they could get to fight and started reforming. So, as you can see on this map, Gordon he has several brigades in there. You got Evans, Ramshear, and Payne. They're starting to attack Hayes, which some of you may know that would be the future U.S. President Rutherford B. Hayes. He would be the commander of the Union Second Division. He learns about the attack of Thoburn's before his own division was attacked by another 7th Brigade from Gordon's column. As you can see, Evans is on the Confederate left. Ramshear's division was on the right, with the support of Payne as the cavalry, to protect the infantry without the infantry, being attacked. So Hayes' division was retreating. Hayes is trying, rally his troops, trying to repulse the Confederates. It's not working. It's not working out well. So what's really interesting during the fighting, Hayes' horse was actually killed, and Hayes was actually knocked unconscious during this fight. And he was injured, and he was almost captured. He escaped, returned to his lines later on. And you can see Kershaw was attacking Thoburn, and then Wharton started moving up they were coming on this road and started attacking Grover and McMillan, and that's when the 19th Corps comes in. You guys can probably see that in the middle of the map. That's when they realized that they were totally unprepared, because they heard the noises, the screamings, the boom, the sounds of the gunfights, the sounds of the cannons occurring in this fight. They realized, okay, what's going on over there? I'm gonna go find out. I'm gonna find out what's going on. So there was a scene during the fight when the Confederates were attacking Thoburn's position. One of the Confederate soldiers described the scene as they overran Thoburn's position. Such a sight as met our eyes as we mounted their works was not often seen. For a mile more towards the rear was a vast plain. Tents whitened the field from one end to the other, while the country behind was one living sea of men and horses, all fleeing for in safety. Men shoeless and hatless went flying like mad to the rear. Such confusion, Such a panic was never witnessed before by the troops. During this fighting, 3 of the 4 Union artillery batteries were quickly captured. Thurber's line was starting to collapse, and that's when the 19th Corps was starting to prepare to attack the Confederates as the Confederates are pushing on. They as Crook is starting to reform the Army of West Virginia, the 19th and the 6th Corps are starting to pour in, starting to attack. They're starting to attack the Confederates, and it's this battle starts around he starts around between I'm gonna say 7 and 7:30. They're starting to push on. Early met Gordon on the east side of the Valley Pike, near the road that leads to the Belle Grove, which is, he finds out what's going on. He's like, just keep pushing on, keep attacking the Union Army, and he notes that the sixth Corps under Rickett was on the ridge west of Middletown. They know that that position is a strong one, and they know that Wharton's been driven back. Um, there were some many accounts that were describing about Gordon and Early, about their meeting when they said that Early took over the command and Gordon returned to his division that had been temporarily commanded by Evans. According to Gordon's point of view, he wanted to concentrate an attack on the Sixth Corps, while Early was satisfied with the day's accomplishment. From Early's point of view, he rode forward on the pike to ascertain the position of the enemy in order to continue the attack. Wharton's division plus artillery follow Early down northeast to Pike, and then that's when Ricketts he becomes the acting commander of the Sixth Corps. He has men move into position within 20 minutes of the start of the Confederate offensive. They know that the Confederates are coming. Ricketts wanted his men to get ready and everything. So he had his 3rd Division under the command of Colonel J. Warren Kiefer. He was on the right flank. His 1st Division, Brigadier General Frank Wheaton, which you can see here on this map, he have him on the left flank, and then the 2nd Division of Brigadier General George W. Gay, which is he had to march south side of the Middletown. All 3 Union divisions were pulled back into a defensive position on the northwest side of the Meadow Brook. Rickett was wounded during the fight. The Confederates keep attacking. They attack around 7:30, with Kershaw attacking Kiefer and Evans attacking Wheaton. Many of this fight led the Confederates to be repulsed. Kershaw and Evans drove the Union division northwest by 8 o'clock a.m. This put 2 Confederate divisions, Kershaw and Evans, beyond Gay's right. At the time, Gay's 2nd Division just became the only organized Union infantry south of Middletown. Remember, he has no support on his right flank. If you don't have anybody on your right flank, you're the last. I'm gonna say you're the last man. You have to make decisions. If you're commanding your division, you have to hold on to your position no matter what the cost is. So Gay decided to move his division about 300 yards into a stronger defensive position, which you can see on this map here. He started taking them back to the town cemetery on a wooded hill west of Middletown, which you guys can probably see on this map. That little arrow pointing Gay's division is moving up towards the north, towards the hill. Gay's division defended this position against many Confederate frontal assault from the division of Ramshier, Pentagram, and Wharton, which you guys can probably see this on your screen here. Pentagram, Wharton, and Ramshier are attacking Gay's. During this time, Gay assumed command of the Sixth Corps because Rickett was wounded, and Brigadier General Lewis A. Grant. So Grant assumed command of the division. About 30 minutes with the artillery fire, Grant moves and he rests for about 20 minutes, and he decided to move his division about 1 mile back where he found support from the cavalry on his east side.
Okay, and so Sheridan's going to come in at this point, isn't he? And he's going to. There's the Union cavalry on a Sheridan's ride. Is that correct?
Yes, that's
So
correct.
tell us about that.
Sharon's spending the night at Winchester. He does not stay with his army at Cedar Creek. And then at 6 o'clock, when pickets south of Winchester report to him that they heard sounds of artillery booming in the background, Sharon realized that they're under attack. He decided to saddle up his horse and eat his breakfast as he gets his way down towards the battlefield. By 9 o'clock, he's riding down south to the Valley Pike. Sharon knows that the battle was increasing as he's getting to his destination. Remember, he's seeing many wagons, many retreating men on his way less than 2 miles south of Winchester. He started rallying his men, encouraging them to reform. Fall on me. We're gonna take care of this. We're gonna repulse the enemy and win this victory. And he's hearing stories from soldiers about what's happening down at Cedar Creek. Sharon arrived at 10:30 a.m. He began to rally his men to to reform his line. His presence inspired the soldiers, and one soldier described it like an electric shock. Rallies his men, reforms his line, but remember, the Confederates are pushing the Union Army back. But for the Confederates, they're too busy looting the Union camps. They do not realize that Sharon has arrived on the battlefield, and also the Confederates are very hungry. And remember, like I said, they didn't have enough. They didn't have enough rations due to Sharon's role in destroying the valley during his little campaign.
Okay, and so at this point, Early's going to halt, isn't he? But then there's going to be a huge Union counterattack. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's correct. So that's when Early he's going to stop. He's going to stop his attack. Remember, this is, like I said, this is very similar to the Battle of Shiloh. This is like, Albert Sidney Johnson's. He's mortally wounded, and that's when Beauregard takes over command. He's like, we're going to stop here. We're going to attack Grant the next day. We're going to finish him off. That's when Early's like, okay, we're going to stop here. I'm going to reform my men. We're going to take care of Sharon. So by 10 o'clock, Early believed that he had Confederate victory after capturing 1,300 Union prisoners and 24 artillery pieces and driving 7 infantry divisions off the field. When he arrives towards Middletown, he finds that the Confederate attack has been stalled by Union artillery and cavalry. The main reason that the two Union cavalries were present at the battle because Early was using James Longstreet's ruse. He was using his little mastermind plan to halt his attack, reform his army, and keep pressuring up the attack. According to many accounts by Jubal Early and John B. Gordon, in Gordon's account, Gordon wanted to attack. He wanted to keep attacking, pressure up the Union Army at Cedar Creek. He wanted to keep attacking the Sixth Corps immediately, and he said that he wrote this, that the failed halting converted the brilliant victory of the morning into a disastrous defeat in the evening. Early's main reason for his halt, he wanted to be cautious. He was a little concerned about the cavalry because the cavalry, the main reason the cavalry, their goal is to scout, gather intelligence, and they would fight with swords and rifles. And Early doesn't realize that the Union Army has repeating rifles, which they can attack on the Confederates' flanks. and that would lead to another disastrous event for the Confederate Army. Um, Another problem that, like I said before, the Confederates were starting to plunder the Union camps. They were starting to take what they could get, and by 11:30, the Confederate line were ready to continue to advance. And Early decided to let Gordon, Kershaw, and Ramshear's division to advance, but they stop at 1 o'clock because Early has another reason for ending the attack was because he was causing his cause he knows that there was Union Army, um, there were Union cavalry in the area, there were missing troops that were plundering the camp, and his men were hungry. They were very exhausted. Early believes that he has a victory. They can rest, have a celebrate victory for themselves. And then
Hmm.
this is where Sharon decided to counterattack early. So around around 3:30, Sharon received intelligence. He believes that Longstreet's corps has arrived on the field. He believes that Longstreet's there, but that's not true. That's not entirely true because Longstreet. Remember, guys, Longstreet was wounded during the Battle of the Wilderness. During the Battle of the Wilderness, yes. So he only sent Kershaw's division to help Juba Early during the campaign, but they learned that Kershaw's division was present at the fight. He knows that Longstreet would arrive from Front Royal to trap the Union Army between Longstreet and Early. He knows that Longstreet's not near Front Royal due to his intelligence, and that's when he decided to order to counterattack on the Confederates. So the Union Army counterattack began just before 4 o'clock p.m. This is where some of you may know this famous guy. His name is George Armstrong Custer, another rising star of the American Civil War. Some of you may know him for his role in Custer's last stand with the Native Americans in the frontier after the Civil War. But here during the Civil War, Custer is one of those rising stars. Um, he decided that Custer was going to go on the right flank, and then you have Merritt and Custer attacking the Confederates' left and right flank. When Custer's attacking Lowe's and Evans, and you have Merritt attacking Morton, and that's when the remaining corps with William Dwight, Grover, Wheaton, with the Sixth Corps under the command of Kiefer and Getty, goes after Early's remaining divisions. Sharon's plan was for his cavalry to contain the Confederate flanks, while the 19th Corps turned the Confederate left flank and drove them east of the Pike. And that would prevent Early's army from using the Valley Pike bridge across Cedar Creek to escape. Because remember, they're trying to capture this army so that they can no longer attack this army. They believe, oh, we can capture this army, we can force them to surrender, and they can capture many prisoners as they can get. And Sharon's know, okay, this will be a huge victory for Abraham Lincoln's election. That's what's going to happen. That's what Sharon's going to do. He's going to continue the attack, but the Union infantry were stalling the attack. Dwight was able to attack Gordon's left flank, but he could not push Gordon's division back towards the Pike because on Gordon's right, because you have Kershaw and Ramshear, they were positioned behind the stone wall and they were assisted by artillery to attack the incoming Union army. And Grover's division and Wright's Sixth Corps had little success against them, and Grover was again wounded. And then, as you can see on this map here, on the Union left, but on this map here, on their right flank here, their cavalry made two charges only to be repulsed by Confederate artillery with enfilading fire from enemy infantry that had resisted the advance of the Sixth Corps. On Merritt's third charge, bolstered by the Sixth Corps, moving forward, the Confederate troops gave way in disorder. Moments before the Confederate troops fled, Union Colonel Charles Russell Lowell, commander of Merritt's Reserve Brigade, located at the Union Cavalry's left flank, was mortally wounded at Thorndale's farm. And then that's when, so we're going to go back to George Armstrong Custer, and this is where his little famous role in Cedar Creek here. So Custer's brigade was engaged with Roster. In this description, Custer left his brigade commander with 3 of his regiments and took the remaining men from his division towards the infantry attack on his left. He planned to get to the rear of Early's men and secure the valley. I actually have the quote. I actually have a quote here from one of the soldiers that describes about Custer involvement. So at Cedar Creek, the Confederates described as disastrous defeat when Custer was pushing the Confederate troops back. One of the Confederate soldier named Private George Q. Peyton, he said, I saw Custer with his long curl hanging down his back. And he also described the road was full of charging cavalry. And Custer was very popular, being the commander of the cavalry during this campaign. He was also very famous for his role at the Battle of Gettysburg when he was fighting in the East Cavalry field, with him leading his Michigan troops, shouting, "Come on, you Wolverines!" Which some of you may have heard that Wolverines quotes from the movie Red Dawn.
So, Union victory, great Union victory then.
Yes, this is what led to the Union victory, and that's what resulted Early's army retreating from the valley. His army is shattered. That's when the end game starts for the army of the Shenandoah under Jubal Early collapse.
Mhm.
Because Sharon pursued. He goes after the Confederates when he goes after the retreating Confederate troops on Fisher Hill before moving south towards the next day.
Mm-hmm. And what's the reaction from Richmond and Robert E. Lee over this defeat? Is this a real blow for them?
So when the battle was lost for the Confederates, this battle ruined the Confederates from the Shenandoah Valley. They would never. This is when they will never, invade the North again. This is the last time they will invade the North, with Early not protecting the valley. And that's when Robert E. Lee's like, he's like, this is it. He's like, this is it. This is the end game. This is in my own words. He's like, okay, this is the end game. And Richmond realized, okay, Early's done for. We will have the breadbasket anymore. For the Union side, they gave Sharon a credit for this Union victory, and this battle, which paved the way for Abraham Lincoln's presidential election. Robert E. Lee was very disappointed in Jubal Early because he lost the confidence of another former Virginia governor. His name was Extra Billy Smith, who told Lee that the troops under Jubal Early, they no longer consider him as a safe commander, and Lee was very disappointed with Jubal Early, and that's when Robert Lee nicknamed him Jubal Early, known as Old Jube. And according to his reign, when Robert Lee decided to relieve Early, he decided to relieve Early's command. I have it right here with me. So, after Lee brings back the remaining Second Corps to join the Army Northern Virginia, defending Petersburg, In late November, he leaves early to defend the entire valley with the troops. But in 1865, when Sharon's troops attack Early at the Battle of Waynesboro, Early could not do his job, and Robert E. Lee would not put him back in command because his subordinates Gordon he was handling his job well better than Jubal Early. And he wrote in his writing, he said, while my own confidence in your ability, zeal, and devotion to the cause is unimpaired, I have nevertheless felt that I could not oppose what seems to be the current opinion without injustice to your reputation and injury to the service. I therefore felt constrained to endeavor to find a commander who would be more likely to develop the strength and resources of the country and inspire the soldiers with confidence. Thank you for the fidelity and energy with which you have always supported my efforts, and for the courage and devotion you have ever manifest in the service. And this is when Early's career's over by 1865.
Okay. So again, he's not, he's thanking him because again, he has done a lot, hasn't he? It's the way that's the way the war's going at that point, isn't it? So what about the casualties from this battle at Cedar Creek?
So the estimated casualties on both sides, for both sides, resulted in 8,824. For the Union forces, they lost about 5,764 men that were wounded, killed, or missing. And as for the Confederates, they lost about 3,000 and 60,000 men under their command.
Okay. And okay, so what about battlefield preservation? And is the battlefield accessible to go and walk around and visit?
In 2002, portions of Sears Creek Battlefield were preserved as part of the Sears Creek and Belle Grove National Historical Park. The park has about 3,700 acres across 3 counties and they have trails, exhibit, and the Belle Grove Plantation Manor House, which has been preserved for many years, which for visitors to check it out. And also, some of you may be familiar with this group, the American Battlefield Trust, and their partners have been helping out preserving the battlefield and helping saving many acres and preserving history for many generation like me and you, Darren, and many other future generation. But for the battlefield, it's controlled by the Sears Creek Battlefield Foundation. Is entirely a private nonprofit, which was founded in 1988. Is an organization dedicated to the preservation and interpretation of the landscape, which involves the 1864 of Cedar Creek. You can actually visit the battlefield today, and as for every October to this day, they would hold the reenacting battles with many reenactors on the north and south side to clash on that field, allowing the public to understand the history. I personally have never been to the battlefield, but I will be visiting the battlefield on the anniversary of the battle for the first time as a Civil War reenactor. I'll be participating in this battle with my unit.
Okay, awesome. And I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to bring up your reenacting. So how long have you been reenacting? How did you get into it?
I got into reenacting right after college. So back in 2021, I graduated from Waynesboro University, and my former professor invited me to his office. He was asking me if I was interested in reenacting, and I said, sure, I would love to. Reenact. So I joined his group called the Ninth Pennsylvania Reserves Company A, and this unit has been around for a very long time, since 1980. And I I start when I started reenacting, I went to Gettysburg, and that's when I participated in my first reenacting battle. And I just want to say I had great time, having a blast, participating in that battle, preserving history, and learning about the past, and so that way we can teach generation not to be repeated. And as you guys can probably see in this image here, there's a photograph of me, portraying a wounded soldier at the George Spangler Farm at Gettysburg. And I had the privilege of portraying a wounded soldier of the 11th Corps. I'm still learning more about reenacting, every year. It's always nice to have a blast, make memories, and make new friends. you know it's like I'm gonna say reenacting is considered my favorite hobby for me to participate in.
So, Brendan, how did you actually get into the American Civil War yourself?
So I was either 7 or 8. It was in grade school. I was reading through this history book, and I was just so fascinated with the photographs of the Civil War. Paintings. Abraham Lincoln there, Jefferson Davis. Got Robert E. Lee there. And then I started learning more about the Civil War in grade school until my mother decided to take me to Gettysburg back in, I believe it was either 2009 or 2010. And I just fell in love with the battlefield. I just fell in love. But I started taking a little break from the Civil War. I started focusing my interest in World War One, World War Two, mostly military history, until I went to college. I went to Waynesburg University to study in history, until my former professor took me into his office, which was filled with many Civil War paintings in his room. And he would, every year, at Waynesburg University, they would do service trips, to um, to do their service for good, helping other people, group organization. So my professor decided to take his students to Gettysburg or Antietam, and I would spend my fall break and my spring break helping out on the battlefield. I went to Gettysburg, Antietam, and Harper's Ferry doing my service, and that's when I started falling in love with the Civil War. Again, that's why I love learning new information about the war. And I'm just really glad that my professor got me back into it. Yeah.
Yeah, excellent. And we're going to get onto this now because you worked hard over the last couple of years and you've got some fantastic social media pages. Tell us about how that started. And you're on Facebook, X, and Instagram. And I'll make sure that the link is in the description below. But just tell us a little bit about how you got these started. And again, you just said there just a minute ago about your love for the Civil War. Is that where this idea came from for creating this fantastic social media presence?
So yeah, so after I was in college, after I fell in love with the Civil War again. I started, I decided it was my turn. Why not I learn why not I learn what I have learned about the Civil War. It's time for me to teach it on social media. To teach it for the public to understand our history, because we don't want I don't want people to repeat history again, because it's likely it's going to be, because remember, if we don't learn about our history, we'll be doomed to repeat it. But I just want to share my social media experience for the public, just show them what I have learned about the American Civil War. And that's when this led to the creation of the Blue and Gray Historian. I created this page I started with Instagram back in 2020, and for the past 4 years now, I have grown and started expanding into Facebook and X, showing the public of my love for history, mostly with everything that's involved with the Civil War. So my history page will cover anything related to the history of the American Civil War with people, places, events, etc., etc.
I must say, Brendan, your pages are fantastic. So keep up the good work. In particular, Instagram is amazing. I know
Yeah,
you put a lot of effort into all your pages, but Instagram is where you really are strong. Um, and you do a lot of sharing as well, don't you, of other people's
of course.
pages. So I appreciate that, and I'm sure there are many others out there in the Civil War community that also appreciate that, and the historical community on social media. But all that is left to say, Brendan, is thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
And Darren, I just want to say thank you so much for having me on here, and thank you everyone for letting me have this topic with all of you about the Battle of Cedar Creek.
Okay, and all that is left to say is cheers.
Cheers.